You're not feeling me. My back is killing me. Right now, every single company in the world is doing AI. They've become AI first or AI native. Most of this ends up being a chatbot bolted onto something that didn't need a chatbot in the first place. Underneath all the hype, however, a new layer of engineering work is honestly showing up. It's not research, it's not really model training, it's regular product engineering where AI is just another cog in the wheel. It's another system to design around. Now, I've worked at two AI startups since 2023. I was laid off as an engineering manager. I went back on the market and found a role as an individual contributor and learned a lot of the skills that I'm going to outline here that opened up more opportunities than I honestly imagined. In fact, learning these skills has opened up more opportunities than any other time in my entire career, bar none, without a doubt. The problem, however, is that a lot of software developers I meet are much smarter than me. They may even be better looking than me, but they're focusing so much on the surface layer. They're focusing on the prompt and how to run more sub agents or how to just be more productive. I don't think this is a losing game. I just think this is the most shallow way to learn how to work with AI. And it's also honestly not what most companies are willing to pay you a lot of money for. Let's be honest, prompting, whether you like it or not, is just part of the job now. It's table stakes. The real leverage is everything around the prompt. A much smarter person than me on Reddit did an analysis of like 700 job openings out there, and I'll have the link to that in the show notes somewhere. And what he found was pretty interesting. He looked at a bunch of AI roles, and he saw these core skills keep showing up. Most of these AI roles required the same cluster of skills. It wasn't traditional machine learning, and it certainly wasn't research, and you absolutely don't need a PhD for this stuff. This was essentially full stack software engineering wrapped up in a new bow tie with some AI stuff added on. In fact, I was called an AI engineer at the last place I worked, even though I was kind of like, not super comfortable with that term, because when I think AI engineer, I think somebody with a PhD in ML or something like that, or a data scientist or whatever. I'm like, me? This guy? But hey, I'll take the title. And if you want to transition into a role as an AI engineer, I'm going to break down the 5 core skills that you're going to need and how to get them. If you're a full stack software developer in Austin, New York, San Francisco, oh my God, you need to listen to this. LA, Seattle, wherever. This is going to be one of those things that is going to be the differentiator for you, especially if you are not super early in your career. Although if you are really early in your career, I would highly suggest adding these skills to your tool belt. There's a really massive gap forming. And the crazy part is, I don't think it would take more than 1 to maybe 3 months to get competent in the skills that I'm going to outline. The salary range for individual contributors in these roles, meaning full stack software developers, back end, senior level roles, can be anywhere from like $200,000 to $350,000. It's pretty wild what people are willing to pay for this right now, especially in tech forward cities, specifically like San Francisco. So let's get right to it. Skill number 1 is that you need to understand how large language models work underneath the hood just a little bit. Before we talk about RAG or agents or model training or any of those kinds of things, you need to have some sort of fundamentals. This not only helps you develop an intuition for what is possible and what is not, it also helps you cut through a lot of the hype that you see online and easily identify hype and lies and be able to explain why those things are hype and lies. At a high level, you probably want to understand transformers, feed forward layers, tokens, embeddings, vectors, next token prediction, and basically what happens when you type a query into a large language model provider like OpenAI or Anthropic and how it determines what to send back to you. I'm not a mathematician at all. I'm barely a software developer. But if you can't explain how next token prediction works at even a high level, you're just kind of building on vibes. And it's also really hard to push back against nonsense and hype you read online because it's basically a black magic box if you don't know these things. One of the best YouTube channels I've seen out there to learn this stuff is 3 Blue, 1 Brown. And I'll have a link to him as well in the show notes. You should watch his series on transformers, matrix multiplication, the basics of linear algebra, and how LLMs work. He outlines the entire thing for you. And if you really want to go a little bit deeper, I would even do something like build a small language model. Use Python, PyTorch, build a small transformer layer, and then actually see how that training data gets used to predict the next token when you give it a word or a sentence. This can really demystify this very complex logic and give you something you can play with and develop some intuition. Now, skill number 2 is the most important one. In fact, LinkedIn just came out with their list of the top emerging skills for software developers. Guess what was at the very, very top? RAG. RAG. I've been saying this for almost a year now, and it's rare that I'm right. right on a prediction. But I was like, this is going to be the thing, right? And it turns out, hey, I was right. Pat myself on the back. If you're going to learn one freaking thing this year, just learn RAG. What is RAG? It's basically how do you give a large language model the right data at the right time based on a text-based search. If you've used Elasticsearch, this is kind of like that on steroids. What does this look like in practice? Taking some proprietary data, like maybe a large set of FAQs or massive amount of documents that are internal to your company or something like that, convert them into embeddings, basically turning a bunch of words into numbers or vectors that can then be stored in a high dimensional space using Pinecone or Quadrant. These are two really popular vector database choices. And then retrieving these semantically. So for example, if you're a DoorDash driver and you're using some sort of RAG-based application, it may look like this. You type in, what should I do now that the pickle juice spilled all over my car? Well, it can take that query and it can say, what types of documents are semantically relevant to that kind of query? It can look up all those documents, and then a large language model could summarize it and then offer a human readable response to that person and say, hey, the pickle juice spilled, no worries. What you need to do is get a rag, clean it up, and then give the person a refund, and then just head home because your car probably smells terrible. Whatever, right? This is retrieval augmented generation at a very high level. Now, why is this so powerful? It's because companies have tons of internal data or want to scrape data off the web and then surface this in a way that a large language model can interact with. If you have documents that are constantly changing or hundreds and thousands of them or millions of pages, this can be really, really helpful. In fact, it can help for recommendation. I believe Spotify is also using this underneath the hood for some of their recommendation or finding songs that are similar by doing things like comparing the lyrics of other songs to others, or you type in, hey, I want to hear some sad songs. Well, that query can be translated into numbers and find other numbers or documents in a vector database that are similar and return them all to you. This is the boring stuff that no one ever really writes about on social media, but it's also the thing that most startups and larger companies are using to build actually useful products with AI. Skill number 3, this one should come as no surprise, agents. But that's a really loaded word. In fact, it's overloaded. In practice, call an LLM programmatically via API. Basically, that's what a lot of agents boil down to. But what people generally mean when they say agents is something that can take a task and do it autonomously until that task is completed. Now, in general, to me, in practice, this doesn't work out so well. Your token costs can explode, and generally, people don't want an agent to just kind of run off and do whatever. They want a controlled workflow. For example, they want to classify a document, and then if that document is one of 3 different types, they route it to some sort of service or person that can then respond to that document. Understanding this distinction between agents and workflows is a real superpower, because a lot of times a CEO or a non-technical person will say, we need an agent, when they really mean we need a workflow. Now, under the hood, it's kind of behaving the same way. You make an API call to a large language model, you feed it the right data at the right time, and then you decide what to do next. You can look up some white papers on this or things that Anthropic has published that go over patterns like human in the loop, React, Orchestrator, and then make your own decision about whether you should be using an agent with tool calling and just does things autonomously, or you should use a true workflow. Having an opinion is really valuable right now because most companies don't, and most people that are doing this are just going off social media vibes. So having an opinion, whether it's right or wrong or something I agree with, is really important. And once you have that opinion, now it's time to learn skill number 4, LLM Ops. This, in my opinion, is the next wave, and more full stack developers and DevOps people are going to be forced or encouraged or required to do this. When you have agents behaving autonomously or in a workflow or whatever, you're going to need to have some sort of observability into how they're behaving. How did it respond to that person? These are subjective and non-deterministic services we have, and oftentimes it will be a chatbot that you're deploying. Or maybe you're routing email to the wrong place. You need to know why. How often is the service failing? What does good look like versus bad? Do you just have some sort of insight into this stuff? This is honestly not too difficult to do because there are services out here that will basically do this for you. Helicone and Langsmith are 2 of the top ones that I've used and personally find them super easy to implement. Basically, they track all your API calls to different large language models, which model you're using, the token cost, the latency. You can even have things like thumbs up, thumbs down on the responses to kind of track over time how things are going. You can see when token costs explode and maybe why, when models drifted, all sorts of cool stuff, and you can set it up, I don't know, in 30 minutes. By the way, not sponsored, like 1%. As AI basically becomes mandatory infrastructure, this becomes a really core skill because tokens aren't free. And even though people keep saying they're going to keep coming down the cost of tokens until what? The companies are less profitable than they already are? I don't know. That makes 0 sense to me. But either way it goes, we'll need to know how to control these costs, however big or small they may be. Skill number 5, testing. Kind of crazy, right? Everybody seems to be totally against testing nowadays. Either have AI write the tests or we don't need tests at all. But this is a massively underrated skill. And I think that for testing AI models and agents and things like that, you're going to want to leverage evals or evaluation sets. These can tell you when models drift, when the underlying provider changes things. I mean, at the end of the day, these are black box services that we have no insight into. So you certainly want to be able to test these things for you to send out a big change, or maybe somebody decided to upgrade GPT-5 to 5.2 or downgrade to 4. If you don't test how your services that use these large language models work with these changes, you're basically flying blind and things can get worse overnight and you wouldn't even know. Basically, an eval is a set of responses that you're like, yeah, this is good. When somebody asks this question, here's a good response. And then you can have another large language model evaluate these. You can say, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think about this response? If the score is under 7 or 8 or whatever threshold you deem correct, then you say, maybe we should take a closer look into this. Oh no, looks like Henry updated a prompt and now we're screwed here. Let's revert that back and make sure our customers don't hate our guts. You don't need to use OpenAI's eval framework either. You can just roll your own. Just have a testing mindset. The same stuff you are already doing or should have been doing, you can just now apply to working with AI models. Now you can really do this in 1 to 3 months. You could watch that 3 Blue, 1 Brown series. Takes you a few hours or maybe less. You could learn about embeddings and vector databases and chunk up some documents and store them in a vector database on the free tier in Pinecone or Quadrant. And I have a project in the show notes that's going to help you do that. Then you could build a small chatbot to help you chat with those documents and find relevant information. You can experiment with tool calling. You could use something like LangGraph, which is complete overkill, but will at least introduce you to agent frameworks. And then you could write some small tests for it and then deploy it and make sure that it doesn't break. And then experiment with different models and temperatures and token settings and all sorts of cool stuff, and then form an actual opinion about this stuff rather than just recycled hot takes, which are now dominating the online discussion. Now, the reality is most people won't do this. It's more fun to argue about whether AI is coming for your job or to dunk on AI or to hate it or whatever. I consider myself an AI realist. I'm also an optimistic person. I do know that adding these skills to my tool belt and teaching it to other people has increased their salary, their status within their company, and positioned them as AI leaders within their organization. This is a very, very unique time where a little bit of knowledge goes a long way. I don't know how long this gap will last, but obviously as more people learn this stuff, the advantage kind of slowly disappears. I really think that you should be learning this stuff because 1, it's fun. 2, it kind of gets you off the stupid AI hype doom train and actually has you build something real. And then it sets you up for potentially a lot of money in the future, or at least opens up the opportunities and the places that you can apply to. As usual, I hope that's helpful. You can find all those resources in the show notes that I guarantee are going to help you and set you apart from the average AI bro telling you how they've solved software engineering for the 25th time this week on a team of 1 shipping something that is pre-revenue. Anyway, sorry to all you pre-revenue AI bros out there. No hate or not too much hate. Anyway, I'll see you around.